A daily tour in London. The sun broke through the typical grey clouds, glowing gently over the busy streets. People bustled about, their voices blending into the chorus of the city. This world was entirely new for two tourists they had always dreamed of exploring. Liam and Sarah had planned this trip for months. They had a list of places they wanted to visit. Today was when they would check some of them off their list. With their backpacks full of essentials and a city map in hand, they began their journey. The iconic red double-decker bus was their first ride. As it wove through the streets, they caught glimpses of London's historic sights. Their first stop, the British Museum. Inside, they marveled at ancient treasures, from the Rosetta Stone to Egyptian mummies. Sarah loved art and history, so she read about each artifact and took pictures. Afterward, they decided to walk to Covent Garden. Along the way, they enjoyed the street performers, musicians, magicians, and even fire eaters. Liam tried some local snacks from the food stalls. He particularly enjoyed a savory pie, saying it was the best he had ever tasted. The London Eye was next on their list. As they boarded the giant Ferris wheel, Sarah's excitement was palpable. Slowly, they ascended, and London sprawled beneath them. They saw the Thames River, Big Ben, and even Buckingham Palace from afar. It was breathtaking, especially when the sun set, casting golden hues across the city. By the time they came down, they felt tired but didn't want to waste a second of their day. They decided to explore the Thames River up close. The river cruise was a relaxing way to see the city's landmarks differently. The Tower Bridge looked magnificent, illuminated in the evening lights. Sarah loved how London's old and new buildings coexisted, each telling a different story of the city's past and present. Liam had a surprise for Sarah. He had booked a late evening tour of the Tower of London. Led by a beefeater guide, they learned about the tower's history, from its construction in the 11th century to its role as a royal palace, prison, and zoo. The Crown Jewels exhibit was Sarah's favorite. She stared in awe at the sparkling diamonds and gold, imagining the kings and queens who had worn them. After the tour, they were famished. They stumbled upon a small cafe near the tower, where they tried traditional fish and chips. They also shared a pot of tea, which warmed them up in the chilly evening. Feeling full and content, they decided to wrap up their day. They wandered around briefly, watching the city lights reflect in the river. Before returning to their hotel, they sat by the riverbank, absorbing the sounds and sights of London at night. It had been a day full of adventure and discovery. They had seen so much, yet they knew there was still more to explore in this vast city. They dreamt of the next day's adventures as they drifted to sleep that night. Liam and Sarah's day in London was one they would never forget. It was a day filled with laughter, wonder, and the joy of exploring a new place together. The Guards of the Queen. The day was bright and sunny, with only a few clouds floating lazily across the sky. Tourists gathered around, their eyes fixed on the grand gates of Buckingham Palace. They all hoped to see the changing of the guards, a spectacle that always attracted a crowd. Within the palace, two guards, Peter and Henry, were preparing for their shift. Dressed in their signature red uniforms and tall black hats, they looked almost identical. They were close friends and had served together for several years. "Ready for another day of standing still?" Peter teased, adjusting his hat in front of a mirror. Henry laughed, "Always. Just as long as no one tries to make me laugh today." It was an unspoken challenge among tourists to try and make the guards break their stoic expressions. Peter and Henry prided themselves on never having cracked a smile during their duty. The clock struck the hour, and it was time. With their rifles by their sides, Peter and Henry marched to their positions. The tourists' cameras clicked away, capturing the synchronized movements of the guards. A family approached, their young son looking up at Henry with wide-eyed wonder. "Mom, why don't they move?" he asked. "They're the Queen's guards," his mother explained. "It's their job to protect the palace and remain still." But the boy wasn't satisfied. He began making silly faces at Henry, sticking out his tongue and crossing his eyes. Henry felt the corners of his mouth twitch, but he remained steadfast. Soon, a street performer began playing a tune on his bagpipes nearby. Peter loved music, and the melody reminded him of his childhood. He took a deep breath, focusing all his energy on staying still and not tapping his foot to the beat. As the day wore on, more and more people tried their antics on the guards. From funny dances to sudden loud noises, the tourists were relentless. Yet, Peter and Henry's discipline never wavered. During a brief moment of quiet, Henry's stomach grumbled loudly, echoing in the silent courtyard. A few tourists snickered, and Peter shot him a sideways glance. "Skipped breakfast again?" he whispered. Henry shrugged sheepishly, woke up late. Suddenly, a pigeon landed on Peter's hat. He could feel its tiny feet shuffling around. The crowd burst into hushed giggles. Peter's eyes never left the horizon, but inside, he was hoping the bird would fly away soon. After what felt like hours, it finally did, leaving behind a small gift on Peter's hat. The crowd laughed openly now. Henry bit the inside of his cheek to stop from laughing too. Finally, the moment they had been waiting for arrived. The relief guards marched forward, and the ceremony of changing the guards began. The music, the precise steps, and the grandeur of the event left the tourists in awe. When it was over, Peter and Henry were free to relax. They walked to the back, removing their hats and stretching their limbs. "You had a bird on your hat," Henry exclaimed, laughing now that they were off duty. Peter rolled his eyes. "Thank you for the update. I hadn't noticed." The two friends chuckled, their bond strengthened by another day of shared challenges and memories. They might have stood still on the outside, but inside, they had a world of thoughts, emotions, and stories that only the two of them shared.